guys, it's a late season here on Public Pursuit, and we're actually heading out to the property now to check some cameras, and kind of wanted to make this episode about giving you an update of what's really been going on the last few weeks. Obviously we haven't had an episode since we harvested our buck during the rut, and hunting gets tough. We didn't really do a whole lot of gun hunting. There's just so many guys out. When we did, we bow hunted mostly, and we had such warm temperatures and a lot of rain that deer just didn't seem like they were moving too much. So we're heading out to our bow only property now, but I just wanted to kind of give you a highlight of what's been going on over the last few weeks in terms of our muzzleloader hunting, what we've been catching on trail cameras, and it's almost the new year, and that gives us about 15 more days of the season left. So, a lot of guys have really given up and packed it up for the year, especially on public land. But for me, the last 15 days are usually some of the best. And over the next few minutes in this episode, I'm going to kind of talk to you about why I think these next 15 days are the best, especially once we get out in the field and start checking our cameras. So take a look at some of the things that we've seen so far here in the late season on Public Pursuit. Well guys, you didn't miss anything. You didn't miss a hunt or anything here on Public Pursuit. And obviously I'm not in the most scenic place. I'm sitting in my garage here with this deer, and I wanted to make this a point on the show, though, that this is kind of a sad thing that we're really having to deal with in hunting, in the deer management community, is vehicle collisions. You can see what I'm holding here is not a giant by any means, but a beautiful 10-point that I think is probably going to be 2 years old. And sadly this morning at about 7:30, I drove a mile from our house, and I see this buck curled up on the middle of the highway. Not a country road by any means, but he had been clipped, and it's just a hard thing to watch, even as a dedicated hunter, someone who loves to go out there and harvest whitetails, and as a biologist who knows that whitetails need to be removed from the population in order to keep a balance. It's hard to sit there and watch an animal suffer. So we went through the proper channels of calling the state police. They came out in a reasonable amount of time, put the animal down, asked us if we wanted the deer, and we definitely did. We did not want to leave it out there and let it waste. We didn't want to just cut the antlers off and leave the body waste. So we went to the office, the county office for the Missouri Department of Conservation, acquired our proper tags that we needed for the carcass, and now we're going to try to salvage what we can out of this deer. He is busted up, both of his legs are broken in the front, his back leg's broken. I think he is probably a 2-year-old deer, but it's a sad thing to see, but it's something that happens all the time. And as a conservationist, as a hunter, as a biologist, I want to make sure that we can use this deer as much as we can, and that'll be by taking the antlers, and we'll be using them in educational events to estimate main beams, inside spreads, really kind of see what a young good deer with potential looks like, and then we're going to try to harvest as much meat as we can off of this deer and use that. So sad situation, but we basically just need to do what we can with it and move forward. But something that wasn't public land, it was private land that he got hit off of, but definitely something that a lot of us as deer hunters experience, and I wanted to make it evident. Don't be shy. Find the proper channels to be able to take that deer. Don't just take the antlers. If you're going to take the antlers, take the whole deer. Use the meat, and definitely use the deer to its fullest, because even though it wasn't a hunting harvest, it was still harvested and removed from the population. So here goes 3 deer. I'm not too surprised I bumped those deer. That's about the third time I've bumped deer at this little draw. Oh, there goes some more. There's number 4 and there's number 5 trailing behind. I didn't really get a look at number 4. Number 5 was a little fawn, it looked like. Well, I just got done marking a GPS point that I call the oak transition area on this public ground. We've got, as you can see, a pretty big thicket of clear cut up there. Transitions into these cedars. And I saw a big rub back there. There's that one. But this is what you call good buck sign. This rub was actually pretty ridiculous. He has ripped that thing up to my chest. I was actually really wanting to put a camera in here because of this transition area. And the goal is, this looks like a funnel right here between this bedding area and there's a bedding area up there, food sources there. That if I get a camera in here, maybe we can catch some of these bucks moving through. Well guys, it's the opening day of Missouri's muzzleloader season. It's about 7:30 right now. We are nestled in a little funnel pinch that we've never hunted before. We've had cameras up here for a couple days, caught some deer here and there. We've got a thick hillside of bedding area up above us. And we've got a thick bedding area below us. And this leads out to some cut bean fields and clover. We've got clover up over the top behind us too, so for late season, this is just an absolute money spot, being in between the bedding and food. Well, there goes 5 deer, and that's one of the reasons I really like this late season. After a lot of guys give up, his deer seem to start getting grouped up, and as you just saw in that muzzleloader clip, we had about 11 deer coming together. There's 5 right there. Just goes to show you that the deer are grouping up as we get later into the season. Up until a few weeks ago, the most I saw in a group were 3 deer. So now to see 4, 5, and 11 deer coming in groups makes it kind of neat, and definitely increases your chances of getting a harvest. With you seeing those does coming through here, that kind of just boosts my morale a little bit,
to get in and sit in a morning or an evening. I'm really surprised they were bedded in that peninsula there of woods, but can't really do much with bumping them. I gotta come by here to get to my camera, so that's part of the late season. So that's one of the tips I was gonna say about why I like the late season is deer grouped up. You know, there's 5 deer together right there, 11 at the muzzleloader hunt. They're around, so we're gonna get in here and check our camera and talk a little more about why I like the late season so much. While we're here about to check our Bushnell trophy cam, one is right at this spot, and you'll see from these pictures, the deer have been moving through almost at any time during the day. We got deer move through first thing in the morning, we've got deer moving through mid-morning, we've got deer moving through at 1:30 in the afternoon during a snowfall. So usually during the late season, I get deer moving through at all times during the day. And a lot of times when it's really cold, deer aren't moving first thing in the morning. So I can even be late getting in the stand significantly after daylight and still be able to get on deer that are moving at 10, 11, 12 o'clock going to and from feeding areas. So that's one thing. Number 2 is deer are getting back to strictly looking for food. The rut is over. Yeah, there's still some doe fawns probably coming in, but it's few and far between. Deer are looking to feed, get fat, and be able to survive the winter time. So what I'm looking for is the main food sources. That lets me go back to my patterning from the beginning of the season when deer were looking for food. Now obviously food sources have changed, but if I can find remnant acorns like what I've got at this spot right here, I'm going to find deer. I also use other wildlife species to indicate where food still is, especially turkeys. Deer and turkey will share a lot of similar feeding patterns, especially this time of year. Turkeys are going to be looking for those remnant acorns, and anywhere that I see turkey scratchings, or like this camera behind me, I got a lot of turkey pictures, there's probably going to be deer feeding in the same area. So, having that food source and using other wildlife to find that food source, along with deer moving at more times during the daylight hours, allows me to get more pictures of even mature bucks. We've got a couple pictures of the 11 point here that we've been hunting during the morning, during daylight hours. I haven't seen him a whole lot during daylight throughout the year. So with those 2 factors, plus what we just talked about with the deer being in bigger groups, I'm going to have an increased chance at harvesting deer during this late season. So that's some other tips that I want to do. Let's check this camera. We'll move on to our last camera, and I'm going to talk a little bit more there because I know I found some new rubs up there when I set the camera up. Another tip in the late season is if you find new sign, don't be afraid to sit a new stand, something that you've never even sat before, you've never scouted before. We found this new rub probably a good 100 yards from where we have been hunting, but it's a completely separate travel area. So what we did is, if you can see behind me, is we've got a Bushnell trophy cam set up that we've left out for about the last week to start scouting this area. But what my plan is probably tomorrow morning or Thursday morning, I'm going to come in, bring my climber, and I'm going to pump up in this area that I've never hunted before. I'm not real sure how the deer are moving through this area, but I know that there's new buck sign, there's good travel areas, and if I get some deer on my camera, why not hunt it? Worst you're going to do is spook the deer, and with the season coming to a close soon anyways, it's not a big difference. Second part to talk about here is I get really excited when I see bucks in the late season. One, because they've made it through almost the entire season, and 2, there's a good chance that I can find those bucks in the same area next year at the beginning of the season, just a year older and a year bigger. So that's what I'm looking for in the late season, and that's why I really get excited about it. So let's check this trail camera and look at some pictures and see what we got here in the late season on public land in Missouri. And thanks for watching Buckscore's Public Pursuit. Hopefully we can bring you something in part 2 of the late season and maybe put some brown on the ground.